Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Reuben, joined here today with Aaron, and we are back to review Severance, Season 2, Episode 7, Chikai Bardo. Boy, this was a tough episode. But before we get into that, I want to let everybody know that you can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts across all podcasting platforms. And if you want more Nerd Soup, you can check out our Patreon page, where we do solo pods, group pods, previews, reviewing shows that we don't get a chance to review here on the channel. So that's fun. And follow us on social medias at Nerd Soup, at Beau Soup, at Nerd Soup Monkey. Go give me a follow on Blue Sky. Although I haven't been posting much, but I might post now. Although I am very sad after this episode, so probably just, not going to be posting much. Yeah, but as I said, I kind of feel like we're reviewing a different show. And I think this is, it's a positive that this was the first episode of Severance that didn't feel like Severance. And that really was the intention. Pulling back the curtain, getting this backstory on Gemma that we've all been craving. And it really is, you can go back and watch Season 1 and those scenes with Miss Casey. Even though it adds up, it still feels like a totally different character in the best possible way. And I think that's, it's bold of them to take the show and completely flip it on its head. And it's giving us these answers, giving us these pieces that create a new door. You open it up and it's an even bigger room. So you have more places to explore, new ideas that are now racking around our brains. But just as an episode of television, it was pretty brilliant, from the performances, from the way that it was shot, to the answers to some of our questions, and more questions naturally. But just overall, a heartbreaking 50 minutes of television. And for an actress, Dietrich Lockman, to get the chance to actually flesh out this character instead of just serving those incredible looks throughout the first two seasons, whether it's what she can do with her eyes and the outfits as well. Now, really humanizing that character. Between the two of them, Adam Scott and Dietrich Lockman, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words. That's how moved I was. For so long, we knew nothing about this character. Now we get this full picture. You fully understand why everyone is so keen on saving her. That's how effective the performance was.
Yeah, it was really an episode just packed with all these different emotions. And I think it's one of the more well-crafted episodes of television I've seen in a while. Maybe like ever, because everything from like the cinematography, the editing, the performances were just so unique to this episode. And it really helped bring these kind of two worlds together because, obviously we've only seen Gemma up until this point in a very limited role, but to expand upon that and show the past and the relationship of her and Mark, and even Mark, this is a side of Mark that we've never seen before. The way they were able to kind of take us into that time period by adjusting what looks like maybe they used film in those sequences. I'm not sure. It could have been a filter, but just that contrast of what we're used to. It's the most lived in this, I guess, not only here, the town, but these characters. It just feels like making that switch is what a new life to the sequences shot in the flashbacks, because there was just a warmth to it. And it's something that we rarely get in the main show because it always is just so cold intentionally and very well done. But that contrast was something that I really appreciated. And it really just brought you to this kind of new place within the show that I think highlighted the relationship between Gemma and Mark. And shout out to like the show's cinematographer was Jessica Lee Gagne. You can always tell when it's a cinematographer turned director, because it's just a different way to tell a story. And every shot just seems so well crafted. And like I said before, the move to shoot the flashbacks differently than what we normally see, it just brought you to a different place. And that's something I really appreciated from this episode.
Oh yeah, dude. When you look at the way the show is normally shot, it's very harsh lighting, very sleek, and that's intentional. Everything is supposed to feel a bit artificial and very modern, while also being stuck in the past. But this aesthetic here, the way that there was just a glare on those flashbacks, the light, even though it was warmer and more cheerful, it did feel like a memory, very hazy, as if these characters were, and they are, remembering the time that they spent together. But it also felt like they were being haunted by these memories. Like when you go back and you watch home videos, it's nice to remember how you felt during those times, but also carrying the pain of knowing those moments are gone. and can never come back. And the aesthetic overall, very dead wife aesthetic that you see in movies when a character is watching home video of the wife on the beach, really close to the camera, looking beautiful, being shy and coy, but really focusing on both of them together, how happy they were. And Gagne commented on this, that it's difficult to give, not an entire lifetime, but a relationship in just 20 minutes. But I think they did a really good job capturing all those beats. And a lot of it is a credit to the visuals. And like you said, her having that experience as a cinematographer, being able to give us this relationship, not just through story beats, but also visual cues as well. Really evoking these powerful emotions that one would feel when you fall in love and you experience life and loss. It was pretty brilliant. And even scenes like seeing Mark, Gemma, Devin, and Rickon sitting down for dinner, the actors commented on this, that it was fun for them to go back to a time when life was more simple, more free. You even see the interactions between Mark and Rickon way more friendly than we've seen throughout the show. And just the relationship that Devin and Gemma had, where they can have that unspoken where she knows right away that she's pregnant. And then the turmoil of their life, of trying to have a kid. They're unsuccessful. They try IVF. That doesn't work as well. Kind of pushes Gemma into the arms of Lumon. And also this idea that they were growing distant from each other because of the troubles that they were having. That it wasn't Mark's overwhelming grief as to why he gets severed, but also this sense of guilt. And I think a lot of people, they're not going to blame Mark for what happened to Gemma. That's natural. That happens in relationships. People grow apart. But that's the thing about guilt. Even if it isn't your fault, it can find a way to ruin your life and overwhelm you. So now you can look back on those first seasons, or that one first season, that would make it the first season, and pity Mark even more. That it wasn't just, I lost my wonderful, beautiful wife, but I'm blaming myself. Because when she gave me that final I love you, I was so consumed by what I was doing. She needed to come back for me to even respond. So yeah, it's devastating. And I think that final shot of Mark learning about Gemma in the car crash, and then Miss Casey being sent back down the elevator, it crushed me in a way that this show never has. And with the reviews coming into season 2, kind of knew that this was coming. But God, I was not ready for it. And talk about Milchek. Over the last 2 episodes, I've really pitied him. What a way to remind us of how much of a bastard he is. That it's the devil at the end of the door telling you, nope, go back to your purgatory.
Yeah, that's the most unhappy I've been to see Mr. Milchek.
I was like, fuck, man, not this guy. Anybody else but this motherfucker.
Usually I see him, I'm like, okay, bad for the characters, but we're going to have some fun here. I didn't have any fun with that.
No, that's a great point.
And that was interesting too, because, I don't know we've talked about it every week, what the fuck are they actually doing? But I found it very strange that when Gemma says, I love you to Mark, and she repeats, I said, hey, I said, I love you. And then just 5 minutes earlier, that's what Dr. Maurer basically said. That whole sequence kind of played out the same way in that little Christmas room. So I don't know if they have access to her memories or that's a coincidence, a nice kind of, reflection of her relationship with Mark. But I found that too similar to be just a coincidence.
Yeah, dude. It was weird because it's sort of a parallel where Mark is pushing Gemma away and Dr. Maurer is doing the same thing. Obviously, Mark is the love of her life, so there is the difference there. It looks as if Mark is almost refining the memories that he shares with Gemma, because there'd be moments where visually they'd be in their living room and then it would cut to Gemma living inside of her quarters. So it's almost as if Mark is refining these memories. They're severing Gemma, trying to see if she can remember where these memories come from, the interactions that she had with Mark, and that they're mimicking, that Dr. Maurer is mimicking the interaction between Gemma and Mark, but flipping it on its head. This idea that, love transcends everything. So, we see the on his desk, he's got the award for completing Allentown. And it also makes me believe, I don't know. I have to go back and check the names. Are all these related to what Mark is refining? Because the other characters are refining memories as well, or we believe they are. So are there people that they're connected to that are being held prisoner by Lumon as well, where it's not just Miss Casey, but it's all these characters that are refining memories? They've got someone trapped down below that they need to save, or I don't know. But it also opens up the questions. Gemma is doing this of her own free will in the beginning. We still don't get an answer as to how they faked the car accident, how they faked her death, because Mark says he identified a body. But she really was, she was drifting towards Lumon and eventually decides to go all in. So you can assume at the beginning, like I said, it was of her own free will. What did they tell her that this was all leading towards? Because she's even being kept in the dark about Cold Harbor. But it seems like she has some information as to what all these tests are for that we yet don't have. And a lot of people have been talking about like mass marketing Severance. If you go to the dentist, you can be severed, and it's an alternate innie that's going to experience that pain, and you get to walk right out. You might have a little pain in your jaw, but you don't have to experience that. And it's also introducing the idea that a person could have multiple innies. And this is something that people had speculated about as well, that in one room you could be one person, and in another room you're an entirely different person altogether. But yeah, the parallels between Gemma's relationship with Dr. Maurer and Gemma's relationship with Mark were very interesting and also very creepy. I mean, his character, it looks like he was the guy pushing the cart in episode 4 or 5, whatever it was. But his character was fascinating as a new villain of this show, because he's got this bedside manner. He's got this calmness to him, and he speaks in riddles, and Gemma even calls him out on it. Once again, Milchek's the only one who's not allowed to speak that way. But his presence was just incredibly creepy and stalkerish and weird, like a voyeur who becomes obsessed with this woman, obsessed with his experiment, and doesn't want to let her go. So it's not only what is Lumon using Gemma for, but now there's this personal motivation that Maurer has, that it's not so much about serving Keir, but serving himself.
Why are you wearing that stupid sweater?
And that's also very disturbing. Because, I mean, they're basically kidnapping this woman.
Yeah.
The amount of crimes that they're committing against these people it's a long list. And apparently the White House is going to give us that list. So stay tuned.
And yeah,
a lot of redacted names.
He just had a super unsettling presence throughout the whole episode. And that kind of shift between that and what we were seeing in the past was really, we say I go emotional roller coaster, but that truly was.
It disgusted me.
Yeah.
It made me feel physically ill.
And seeing what they're doing to her inside of Lumon, and you got to wonder how long does she think she's been there too? Because obviously with severing, you can manipulate time in a way where maybe it is only a few months to her because of all the different, I guess, innies and time spent in these different rooms being experimented on. Like, what did they say to get her down there, and why? Like you said, it seemed like she was a willing participant at first, and then slowly she begins to realize what some of the other characters we've seen realize about Lumon, and that not everything is what it seems, and they kind of are trapped. Yeah, it just brings, like you said, we get insight into some things, and other things are just still there lingering in the back of your mind. It helps keep the mystery fresh and intriguing from week to week.
Well, and the way that they keep telling us about the way that Lumon keeps preying on vulnerable people, because we learn in the conversation between Irving and Bert that it was the church that inspired him to be severed. So somebody feels that their soul has been corrupted and they can find redemption in the severed floor. And now with at the clinic where Mark and Gemma aren't able to conceive a child, and you see Dr. Maurer walk past them and he stares at Gemma. And that's the other thing. I thought in the beginning maybe Gemma escaped and then she found Mark in the real world and then she went back, because even the nurse says to her, "Where did you go?" But it looks like he had his eyes on her as soon as she stepped in that office. So what is it about these vulnerable people? Is it as simple as they have nowhere else to turn, that they become hopeless and Lumon's able to exploit that? Or is there something more to these characters, more to the connections that they have with people on the outside world? This idea that love transcends everything. Because even at the very end there, it felt like Miss Casey was going to ask for Mark. So even though she escapes, becomes her oblivious innie, there's something inside of her that wanted to see her friend and the person that she loves. And I think season 1, Helly trying to escape was always so defeating, because you're always so close. You're right there. You step out and you get snapped back in because of the severance procedure. But what they did with Mrs. Casey, especially how scary it was the lead up to her getting to the elevator and escaping to the severed floor and her being oblivious to what's going on, That was like all the times we experienced that with Helly times a million. That was just so emotionally draining, especially after experiencing that entire episode, for that to be the finish for Gemma's character.
Thank you, Miss Casey.
So yeah, this idea that Lumon's preying on these people, it's just really disturbing, the way that they're opening up this world to how nobody is safe. Anybody can come under the clutches of Kier.
Yeah, and it can be genetic too. I mean, I really don't know. And it was very interesting, the other floor of MDR, their doppelgangers working, and it looked like they are experimenting on Mark as well. So we talked about why bring Mark back into the fold, and we just assumed, and maybe part of it is that he's the only one that can really refine microdata the way that he can, and they really need him to complete the job. But it seems like they are working on him as well, so that adds to why you would want to keep what you invested in-house and finish that up.
Yeah, because even when we get the choppy editing reminded me so much of Twin Peaks: The Return, and a lot of people have been talking about how, you know, the show overall reminds them of Lost, and that this was, I haven't seen Lost, but I've seen people say that this was the most that the show ever felt like Lost, because it really flips all these ideas on their head. And sort of that choppy editing that reminded me of Twin Peaks. You would hear the static sounds. Whenever Twin Peaks used the sound of electricity or static, it was to hint at a transition between our world and a different reality altogether. So I don't know if they're playing with alternate realities here, but I think that was a fun touch to really develop this uncanny feeling between going back and forth between the memories, like you were being transported to new worlds entirely. But when they went down to the basement and they were showing the data refiners who are watching Mark and his crew and rewinding and fast forwarding, I didn't know what the fuck was happening. Were they feeding them the numbers, it looked like, or, you know, what's going on there? And then you see Mr. Drummond talking about, are the severed barriers holding up? Was that about Mark, or was that about Gemma? Was it about both of them? Because we know with Gemma, she could have 8, 9, 10 innies, depending on how many rooms are there. It looked like there were more rooms than 6. So yeah, that was, giving us what we wanted. We want to go down that elevator, see what's going on down there. And it just turned out to be a horror show. I mean, just waking up, imagine being an indie, waking up and you're on a fucking crashing plane. But just terrifying. And I thought that was fun too, because this was probably the least funniest episode of Severance. But all the different looks that they were giving Gemma, I thought were funny. Just treating her like a doll. And in a way, it's not funny. It's actually kind of disturbing that they're just, like I said, using her as a doll, as an experiment, as a guinea pig. But, you know, the different outfits, being first class on a plane, or it looked like one outfit, she was like an athletic gear, the housewife, the miserable housewife writing the thank you notes. So that's torture. And I know the name of the episode relates to an idea in Buddhism about the stage between life and death. And, being caught up in the illusion of these new identities that you're creating because you can't accept that your time is done. So they really play with that idea in a way that makes it a torturous experience for Gemma. And for Mark, having those memories of the way that they drifted apart and that she's still alive. She's still down there being held prisoner. People were saying that, for a long time they thought Gemma was just going to lose herself entirely and that Mark would have to learn to let her go, to move on. But it looks like no, Gemma is fighting tooth and nail to escape, to get back to Mark. And that's interesting too, is that she remembers her past life when she's not in those rooms. So how long has she decided, because she keeps asking, when can I go see Mark? So it looks like she's been willing to give them some of the benefit of the doubt here, that eventually she will be set free. And then here we see that she snaps, where finally somebody fucking hits one of these motherfuckers over the head with a chair.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, how when he say to her, like, Mark moved on, has a daughter already, just...
Well, I do wonder if that was hinting towards Mark and Helly having a kid. This isn't true yet, but they always do this in the show, where they drop a line or two and it comes to life later in the show. Like, your Audi's good at building tents, and then Mark makes that makeshift tent to fuck Helly. So, I don't know. There could be something more to that. But brutal manipulation.
Yeah. I mean, either way you look at it, it's insane. And it seems like he loves Gemma. I don't know if it's the doctor falling in love with the patient that he spent like his own experiment, or what's going on. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past anybody that works at Lumon. I feel like we've seen numerous times and numerous examples that their cruelty knows no bounds and their levels of manipulation are that of, I don't even know. I don't have a reference point because this is what they do is just awful to these people. The lengths that they will go to complete their project, we still don't know what that is. So it just makes you wonder what is so important to not only, we've seen how they view innies as subhuman, but outies as well. To put them through this is just despicable, and to have it be just levels of people like from the top down bought into this cult and to this work, it just builds in my head like what could possibly be going on here. And I think it just comes down to Keir and his, it's something where I doubt it's something that they feel like is a benefit to they might twist it in their mind as a benefit to humanity. If it's a simple concept that we've seen before in terms of like greed or ultimate good, but it just seems to be this fucked up philosophy in this cult that is the main motivator for these people, and that's what's scary about it.
Yeah, and the obsession with data seems to be a common idea in sci-fi these days, even Westworld, where we're, accruing all this data and then using that to unlock immortality. I think it could be as simple as that. And I do appreciate that idea, especially today. It's so relevant when you look across politics and business, older people clinging to power, desperate to stay relevant by any means necessary, and the horrible things they'll do to achieve that. And I think Cold Harbor, we still have the mystery of why, in what way is Mark refining Cold Harbor? How is he even attached to that? People have been speculating that's where personalities go, not to die, but to be stored. And they keep asking Gemma, what do you remember about these different experiences? Maybe they're trying to refine it to a point where when you enter that room, you're severed, you come back out, you don't remember anything. There's no subconscious, there's no feeling, there's no pain whatsoever. All of that can be wiped out, where you can manipulate the brain to a point where that is totally a different person altogether. So we don't know yet, but the way that they're teasing it has been just so incredibly creepy, because this is the first time. There's always been psychological thriller elements to the show, but this is full-blown psychological thriller from beginning to end. And I do appreciate the way that the show at times feels like a movie. You feel like you're watching just a 50-minute episode, and you don't need much context to really, you need, information about the overall show, but, for them to tell this story with the flashbacks concurrently with the present day and Mark being passed out and all of it to feel so seamless while also keeping that chill crawling up your spine. When Gemma finally does attack Mauer and is running through those hallways, terrifying. Just everything is always perfectly lit inside of the Lumon offices. And now when Gemma's going to escape, it's dark. So, and I thought the nurse, even though she doesn't do much, she just had Sandra Bernard's got that perfect look of someone who is going to play nicely up until a certain point, that at any moment she could snap. So she was not quite as creepy as Dr. Mauer, but she was a bit terrifying as well. And just, to compliment Deacon Lockman, like I said, hasn't really done much speaking up until this point, but she was amazing in this. And it's always great when a director knows what they have. Like, I'm just going to focus on this woman's eyes because they're beautiful, and she could tell a lot of story that we don't need dialogue for just by honing in on her. And the chemistry between the two of them was lovely. From the first time they met at the blood drive, you see that instant chemistry, two intellectuals who, are both young, both good looking, so it's a natural fit. And they don't, they get right to it. They have a one-night stand. That was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I wonder, because like we said with the fertility clinics and the blood drive, like it wouldn't surprise me if Lumon has their hands in all of this. They're using this DNA to kind of either highlight potential candidates for their experiments via genetically, and that's kind of how they whittle down the pool of like, all right, these are the people we're going to focus on more. Or maybe they even, like when Gemma was pregnant, who was her doctor, Was it a Lumen
Yeah.
doctor? Did they manipulate them on the outside world to artificially create this grief to make them better prospects for the Severance experiments?
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg.
Yeah, nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is happenstance. This was all manufactured by the folks at Lumen to get the perfect guinea pigs.
Well, the idea now, too, is that anybody working at Lumen can't be trusted. We learned that people can be severed anywhere in the world with heli, and that not only can you have one innie, but you can have 6 or even more than that. So every character in the show who has ever been in the Lumen headquarters, you can't trust them. We don't know who they actually are. That all these identities could be made up. They could be false. They could be manipulated.
Well, this is something people focused in on during the whole is it Helly or Helena? And the pitches of the elevator dings when they came up was maybe what they used to initiate the severance. And I wonder if different pitches cause different innies to come out. And even what Devin said, if they bring Mark to the birthing campsite, if he were to go through one of those severed rooms, would a different pitch ignite, and it would just be a different Mark, not Mark S from the severed floor, but cool Mark maybe.
Mark who knows how to dance. Just always wants to stay in the cabin.
Mark S? No, I'm cool Mark. He has sunglasses somehow and cigarettes.
Now bump that, Kendrick. I'm about to crip walk. See this footwork? You see this feet work? Yeah, no, that's a really fucked up idea too. So it looks like what they're refining is the pitches to put people in different places. So when you enter a door, and that has been refined by the Lumen employees. So when you walk in, you're going to think you're in a scenario where a plane is crashing, or you think you're at the dentist. God, that is, talk about torture, being constantly at the dentist for that personality.
Yeah, teeth looking right though.
That is true, yeah. She got the fucking shiny teeth in me, like Chip Skylark. Cold Harbor is still being refined. So that seems like, I mean, obviously it is the end game to where you're severed and your personality can be stored and then brought back at a later date or a later time if necessary. I don't know why that would be necessary, but that seems just like something for the good guys to strive for, that we're going to enter Cold Harbor, get that personality back and put it back inside of Gemma. It's probably a lot more messy than that. And I do think that, you know, these characters, especially with how heartbreaking this episode was, that they're not going to have a happy ending.
No, I was just thinking about this too. It's so fucked up that, like, if they win, like, what is Miss Casey, Mark S, do they die?
Right.
Like, what's the best case scenario that, oh yeah, Mark finds Gemma, they live happily ever, but Dylan doesn't exist anymore. Helly, well, maybe they'll keep Helly around. She seems like one of the good ones, but like Mark S ceases to exist, Miss Casey. Or maybe it's the opposite, where the Audis have been through so much that they let their innies live.
No, it looks like sacrifices in store. I mean, even for Gemma, like the idea of reintegration.
Oh, yeah, well, I guess.
What does that even mean for her?
I guess integration kind of solves that problem, but if it even works.
But maybe if it's 6 different fucking innies and being integrated into one person, maybe that overwhelms you and you can't handle it.
Yeah, there's a lot at play here. And I don't know, don't call Selvig. That seemed like a reach.
Yeah.
That's the last person. That would be cool if she came and, like, when Mark woke up and she was there and it's like, all right, let's burn the whole place down.
Yeah, that would be kind of epic. But I saw somebody talking about how one of the books that Gemma was teaching about at the university was about a man rebelling against the people he has been working for. So it could hint towards Coobel rebelling against Lumen. So, and even Cold Harbor is a reference to, you know, major battle of the Civil War. So I don't know. Ragabi is someone that, you know, I'm not going to be surprised if she's doing this for personal reasons, that she's been manipulating Mark. I think she's got that written all over her. I don't know if she's just this white knight. She's just been so jaded and wronged by Lumen that she wants to take up this fight, because it doesn't seem like any character is doing this for any other reason than personal reasons. So I don't know about Coobel. I still think that there's a chance she could, I guess, team up with the innies. But I like the way that they're playing with that. I do miss her. I miss Patricia Arquette in this show. So I kind of want to, everyone is complaining that she's going to get a full episode to herself and we're going to have to see the Coobel backstory. I kind of want to see that.
Yeah, she'll probably be fire. I don't know. That's a risky move because obviously it's you can see her taking up two different paths here, where it's like I need to still prove myself to this cult that I've been indoctrinated into since I was a child. And no matter what happens, she's always going to have that need to help them and get back into their good graces and show her worth. Or she's just going to be completely scorned by them at this point and do what she can to bring them down.
Yeah, I think it's what's great about the way that they've handled Coobel is that it's a character that was so important in season 1. In season 2, they've taken a step back with their character. And I think it's a character that could have gotten lost in the mix to where she's just not important anymore. So because she's a bigger name and a bigger character, we're going to give her stuff to do that doesn't really fit the story, but we have her and we have to use her. They're taking the route of nobody is sure what Coobel is thinking, where she is, what she wants to do, what her motivations are at this point. The last time we saw her, she was intimidated by that man that was standing with Helly. She refuses to come back under the conditions that Lumon set, and she's just a wild card out there in the wilderness. So I kind of like that I like the way that they've been handling her. And I imagine when she does come back into the picture, whether it's to try and get back in the good graces of Lumon or to help the innies, it's going to be a significant moment and an awesome moment. And I do think that, there's a lot of things that she could answer. And I think that would make for a great scene where she does open up to Mark about what she experienced and how they can stop what's coming. And not even stop what's coming. It's just explain what's coming and maybe how can that work to their benefit. And we see, Mark he's really closing in on Cold Harbor, and that is the title of episode 10. He's at 96%. God, I can't fucking wait for that finale. I know we got 2 more before it, but I was like shaking when I started this episode. I skipped the recap. I skipped the intro. I was like, I just need to see this fucking episode. Yeah, but just, overall a great episode. And like I said, the way that they handled the past relationship between Mark and Gemma, just giving us all those scenes of them together, falling in love, having this blissful domestic life, the turmoil and the tragedy of not being able to have a child, and the distance that grows between them. It's heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking.
Two incredible, the whole episode was incredibly well shot, but the two standouts I think were when they zoom in on her face at the dinner and it just the background transitions and she's in Lumon, and then the final scene when Mark kind of realizes what's going on, walking to the door with the policeman there, and then fading into Gemma coming back into her hell. It's basically them, both of these characters, just going obviously at different times and at different moments, but entering their own personal hells at the same time. It really was just, like I said, one of the more well-crafted episodes of television I've seen.
Yeah, dude. Watching Mark become consumed by the darkness was haunting because we know where he's headed going into season 1, how broken of a man he was. And it was cool to see him kind of just, normal Mark, kind of the Adam Scott we've come to recognize over the years. And for the two of them, and me as the viewer, finding myself so attracted to both of them in this episode, it's going to sting even more. And there's been a lot of discourse on the internet. Is Adam Scott hot? Is he not? I'm going to come down on the side of is hot. So I've settled it. You're welcome.
Yeah, you see flashback Mark, and then Mark when he wakes up. They just do he really wears all the pain and grief and stress that we've seen him go through these past 2 seasons in that moment.
That's me before the next season begins and me when it ends. Devastation. No, Deacon Lockman does have a crazy face card. Everybody's been talking about that. So, like I said, the director was like, we're going to use that. We're going to use that to our advantage here. And she speaks Russian. God, what the... That's tough, man. I feel you, Mark. That's tough, buddy.
Yeah, Mark just, I don't know what about him in the workplace is, but man can't help himself.
Yeah, no, he's legit out of control, man. Fucking somebody put that dog down. All right, guys, that's where we're going to leave it for this episode review. Episode 7 of Severance, Season 2, Chikai Bardo. Ooh, it's going to be tough to get through the rest of the day, but we will power on. Aaron, thank you for joining me on this episode. Everybody out there, thank you for watching. Leave your comments down below. New theories, new ideas. There should be a lot of them. Some will be correct, some will be wrong. That's the way of life. Next episode, Sweet Vitriol. Looks like there's more pain in store for us, but that's fine. I'm good with the pain.
No, but it's going to be sweet.
Oh, right, yeah, Sweet Vitriol. I forgot, yeah. I went straight to the vitriol. I'm a glass half empty type of guy.